as we get ready to rock this meetup, I want to introduce you to my really good friend Mitch. And the way me and Mitch met actually was we met at a real estate event, and it was the networking portion of the real estate event that we originally met at. And honestly, I have to be honest, I didn't even run into Mitch myself or meet him directly. My really good friend Tony met Mitch, and then Tony introduced Mitch to me. But the one thing that I really loved about Mitch was that Mitch was always a person that was looking to just get better. He was looking to grow. He was looking to do bigger things. And like he wasn't just talking about it, he was actually like putting the energy and action into like going out and doing it through networking, through putting himself around people that were investing in bigger deals. And with that, I want to introduce you my people. And when I say my people, like it's Mitch, it's Saturday, 9 o'clock. We got people that are showing up that want to talk real estate, and those are my people.
I love it, man.
Yeah. So, Mitch, if you don't mind, can you just share your backstory, how you got into real estate?
Absolutely, man. You know, it's what I love is the fact that I think it was like almost 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, that we crossed paths for the first time. Probably 3 years ago now, I feel like.
Yeah.
We crossed paths for the first time, and then it was at the next networking event that we were really like wow, Oliver, like we keep running into each other at these same events. So it's like, okay, we're on the same path. We have the same mindset, same focus here. And then I think it was like probably another year later, we found out that we were in the same deal together. We're like, oh yeah, we started hanging out. We started talking more. We're like, yeah, I invested in that deal. So it's awesome to kind of see, like, when you're going to these events and you're networking and you're shaking hands with people, that when you're on the right path, you're going to find the right people to come with you on that journey. So thank you so much for helping me out over the years, and even bringing me to this Houston property. That was awesome too. You reached out to me and you're like, hey man, I'm going out here, come out. I'm like, let's go. So I love that. My background in real estate, really, I mean, I started when I was in the Army. I was 18 years old. I joined the Army. I grew up in Vermont. There wasn't a lot of jobs there. I got deployed to Iraq 1 year later. So actually, August 3rd is the day I deployed to Iraq. It's coming up pretty quick. And when I was in Iraq, I was making pretty decent money. I was making like $28,000 a year, working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. 300 combat missions. But when I was over there, my dad started mailing me these real estate catalogs, and I was flipping through these catalogs and I was like looking at houses because it was a good way to pass the time. And I just remember like looking at houses and comparing them. It's like, why is this house going for 275 when this one's going for 400? And it's like, oh, there's carpet in this house, and these are old doors, and this one needs windows, and this one needs paint. So I started like cutting these houses out and putting them in like envelopes and being like, I could make this house look like this house if I just came back. But so I always wanted to buy real estate, but then like I realized it was kind of difficult to get started in real estate. But I ended up buying my first house like 5 years later from then, using the VA home loan. And then that house I house hacked, right? So I rented out my rooms, and there was even a point where I rented out both bedrooms and I was sleeping on the couch because I didn't really care. I'm like, I'll sleep wherever. Let me get that extra cash and pay on this mortgage. And then I deployed again to Afghanistan in 2011. When I was in Afghanistan, I'm like, okay, I really got to change up my life. I don't want to spend the rest of my life like overseas, because I did Korea, I did Iraq, I did Afghanistan. And I'm like, I really have to figure out how to get out of here and change up my life and like really get some more freedom. So I ended up buying a fourplex in the back of an MRAP, like a military vehicle, from Afghanistan. And that was when I first started getting some like real cash flow. That thing was generating like $1,000 a month. And I'm like, okay, well, if I can do this and just keep doing this, then I'll just keep buying real estate, because it seems so much easier than having to work, all these long hours that I'm working. So I came back thinking I would be able to buy more real estate. But when I came back, I went to a bank, and the bank's like, no, you can't buy more real estate. You don't have 2 years in the same job field. So I don't know if you guys have ever battled with lenders or anything like that, but that was the biggest hurdle for me, especially in Vermont, because there wasn't a lot of people that even knew about private money lending or anything like that. but like Oliver said, I basically just reached a point in my life where I'm like, you know what? I don't care what it's going to take. I'm going to buy $1 million worth of real estate in the next 12 months. And I told everyone in the world, I'm like, hey, like, and by November 17th of next year, I'm going to have $1 million worth of real estate, whatever it takes. And when I did that, I started like all these other people started reaching out to me. They're like, oh man, hey, I'm interested in real estate. I'd love to help you out with this journey. And I met my good investment partner, Chris Kelly, and we started fixing and flipping properties and doing refinances and burrs and all these good things and going to auctions, and we hit our goal. So after that, I kind of had the momentum already in place because I started making these movements. And then 4 months later, I doubled that goal because of all like the massive like action I was taking to get to that goal. So, that was a few years ago, and things have, really picked up since then. But I was still dabbling in smaller real estate, like the 2 units, the 4 units, the 8 units. And then it wasn't until like, 2, 3 years ago, I started getting into syndication. And I'm still like, I still take on some smaller deals, these 2 to 8 units. But now syndication is really, where I'm more focused because I actually think it's easier to do the fix and flips on apartment buildings than it is to do on this smaller stuff. Yeah, it's the
Why do you
same.
say that, Mitch?
I just think like in general, like you're looking at the same blueprint, right? It's like the smaller square footage, it's kitchen cabinets, you're basically you have one design that you can, just basically rubber stamp and just keep going down. And and you can compare it to other properties, right? Which is super easy too. And you can look at 200 other units that are getting a certain rent rate and you can be like, oh, let me just make this little improvement and I know people will pay for that. I think it's just in my mind, once you get into like the bigger apartment deals, it's harder to get the capital or the group to get started in it, I think. But once you get there, it's like travel. The difference is like, do you want to ride a bike to the next town over, or do you want to take a car?
Right.
And I think that's really what it comes down to.
Right. No, and I appreciate you sharing all that. I didn't realize that you bought your fourplex from the back of a military vehicle. So actually, first off, I want to give you a round of a hand for all your service there.
Thanks,
Really
man.
appreciate that. It allows us honestly to continue to do what we do every day. So I appreciate you and the protection you provided for us. Um, so one thing I did find interesting was that your dad was sending you these real estate articles. Was he just trying to keep your mind engaged and stuff back home, or like what was like your parents and your family's thoughts about investing in the
Yeah,
beginning?
my dad owned just the same house. So, through high school he bought a house, and much like my grandparents too, right? Like my grandparents have lived in the same house for probably 50 years and they sold it 2 years ago and moved to a smaller home finally because they're getting up there in age. And my dad, he's been living in the same house since high school. So, every time I try to talk him into getting into real estate, same kind of thing. Like in fact, actually when I told him I was going to buy the fourplex, he's like, why don't you just pay off your first home so you can live debt free? And that was kind of like the a little motivational like piece for me. It's like I yes, that's a good idea, and yes, there is some value there to be debt free, but I also was reading a lot of books, right? Like Think and Grow Rich and Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it's like that your primary residence isn't really an asset because it doesn't make you money. And I'm like, I have to figure out how to get past that. And it was a big risk, right? Taking that first step to go, okay, this is completely an investment property. And I didn't have any really mentors at that point in time other than books. So I really, and Bigger Pockets really wasn't around back then, right? So you didn't really have all these other experiences to bounce off. But what I remember thinking back was like in high school, when I looked back at all my friends that were like taking vacations and, like, oh, we can't be here this week because we're going scuba diving in Mexico or something. I'm like, I always realized that their parents owned properties. Like Mark Johnson was a good friend of mine, and his dad, he owned a couple rental properties around town. And I just remember like seeing these people own real estate, and it's like, well, if I want to take vacations and I want to live that life, maybe real estate's the path for me. So I just kind of bridged that gap for my friends more than my family. They didn't really invest in real estate more than just buying their primary residence.
That's such a funny story. I appreciate that too, because I mean, honestly, that was one of the determining factors for me as well. Like I saw my friends' parents that had all these like apartment buildings, and like they always had the resources to send their kids to college and do all of the things. And I was like, and they were normal people, man. They were like, they didn't have like these big fancy jobs. They didn't own their own business. But they always had the resources to do whatever their kids needed them to do to like go to the next level. So it caught my eye, it caught my attention, and it's really funny that was how you saw it too.
Yeah.
So you were telling us you got into real estate literally in the back of your military vehicle, purchasing that fourplex. After the fourplex, what was the next acquisition yeah.
Yeah. So it took me, like I said, when I came back, I actually got my real estate license, but because I was in a different career field, I couldn't get lenders, and I would actually block out like once a month. I would block out a time where I'd be like, hey, let me go to the bank, and I had like this nice folder. I'm like, hey, I bought this property, and I did this, and I raised the value of this property, and I have this fourplex, and this is making me 22%. And they're like, that's cute. You don't have a job for 2 years. Like, don't just come back later. And I would literally go to bank to bank to bank trying to figure this out. And I probably knocked on 70 doors. In fact, there was even one lender, like when I actually hit that 2-year mark and I set that goal, I'm like, I'm going to buy $1 million in real estate. So that was in November. And I reached out to this one lender, and I remember he goes, hey, I understand that you want to buy, you want to get approved for a loan, but I'm going on vacation for the next 3 weeks. If you could follow up with me at the first of the year, I'll be happy to get back to you. And I remember in that moment, like something kind of maybe broke inside me where I'm like, no way am I going to let someone stand in front of my goals like this. I'm going to double down. I'm going to talk to every lender. And then I finally found a bank, like a community bank, that would actually hold the notes in house, right? Like they're like, okay, yeah, you can buy a property and we'll hold on to it. So the next acquisition for me, I used a technique from Millionaire Real Estate Investor. I don't know if you guys ever read that by Gary Keller, but it talks about positioning yourself as a real estate investor. So even though I just told the world that I was going to do this and I only had 2 properties, everyone's like, oh, Mitch will buy your house. Mitch will buy your house. And I ended up buying a single family property from this family that had to move to Tennessee. I paid like 160 for it. And the house was so big that I was able to actually add another kitchen to it. Right. So I turned it into a duplex. So I converted this single family into a duplex, and, I added like $100,000 worth of value just by doing that. And then I took that money and I did a quick little refinance. And then that money gave me enough money to buy an auction home, which I bought for like $60,000 with Chris Kelly. And then that one we fixed and flipped in 48 hours, and it was worth like 100. We paid the cash for that. But it was worth like 130. And then the bank gave us a line of credit on that house for $100,000. And we were able to just keep rolling those deals down the road. So a single family to a duplex, and then a single family that we did a line of credit on. And then we just kept going after that.
Mitch, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So what Jen asked, how did you fund the $100,000 rehab on the duplex conversion?
Yeah. So funding it, right? So we put 20% down on it to get approved for it, but we only put, I want to say, probably close to like $30,000 in rental in it. We had to basically go through and do a total rehab on the whole thing, but with a new kitchen and all that fun stuff. So at that point in time, I had a little bit of money saved up from being a real estate agent, but really 20%, 32,000. So I only had $70,000 in it, really.
Yeah. So, and then
I did put a lot of that on a credit card. Actually.
Yeah. So the rehab, you can pay a lot of that, probably, you probably use the credit card, right? And then you refinance the high interest when you pulled out the money from the home equity and paid off the credit card, probably, right?
Yeah, it took about 45 days to do exactly. So it took about like 45 days to do the renovation, but I also hit that ceiling where a lot of other banks weren't going to let me refinance because I didn't hit the 6-month mark. But because it was a community bank that held this in office, they're like, okay, no problem. Because they're looking like local banks. Sometimes local banks are different than big banks like Wells Fargo and US Bank and Chase Bank. Like these local banks, community banks, credit unions, like they're holding those assets on their own books. So they're able to do a few different things, even though I paid a little more interest for that than what I would pay if I went to a traditional bank.
Cool. Yeah. No, and honestly, like I love the small deals that I did in the beginning. You know, those like help me get understandings that I now use in the bigger deals, right?
Mhm.
And honestly, like I was doing and I still do the same thing. Like for my smaller deals, I just refinance, take the capital out, and then invest it into bigger deals. So
Yeah.
I those smaller deals, you know, they help me get into the game, build confidence, and now I use that confidence to then go after the bigger deals and go and be able to add value to those bigger deals, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, I know you invest in, you know, single families, duplexes. Now you're getting into multifamily syndications and all that stuff. What's in between though? I know you do a couple things in between there too.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Well, I mean, there was the next deal after that line of credit that really opened the doors into multifamily for me. Because what I did was I took that $100,000 line of credit that I had and I bought another flip house, but it was more of it was it was originally a rental property, like a single family rental property. So I took that $100,000 and I was able to buy another property um, that was a rental, a single family rental, and then I did a 1031 on that. So when I raised the value on that property, I 1031 that into an eightplex. And that was when I really like, okay, commercial seems pretty nice. But that was like, I think the big breaking point for me. Cause that like, I finally hit that $1 million mark where I'm like, okay, well, let me go after some bigger stuff. And that was when I was able to like double the portfolio and like, like just like overnight by getting one big deal. I got out of like the single families and the duplexes and I went to that eightplex. But yeah, I mean, in the meantime, like,
You
I've
you
always been
did
doing
say
a
a
few
big
other things.
term in there that I gotta stop you. What's a 1031? You can't just say that and leave us hanging like that. What's a 1031?
Yeah. So I didn't have to pay taxes, right? Because when you're doing these fix and flips, you have to pay taxes on stuff. But and the only way for me to like kind of roll everything through, I got really creative on it, right? It's like, well, I only own this property for I think 3 months, 3 4 months. I bought it in December, yeah, December to March. So I bought it in December, and then I closed on that eightplex. But basically, I bought that thing for 100 and I think 15,000 or something like that. Put $10,000 in it. It had a daycare in the basement. That was all like it was really messed up. It was really weird property that the family wanted to get rid of because they weren't supposed to be running a daycare. Anyways, I came through, cleaned the whole thing out, redid the kitchen, redid the bathroom, painted everything, did the floors, just like what you do with an apartment building. And then when I sold that property, I had almost 100, extra $100,000 or so there, but I would have paid a lot of taxes on that. So instead of paying taxes on it, I 1031'd it, which is basically a way to roll all of your money from that deal into another deal without paying taxes. And that was enough to make the down payment on the eightplex, which because I was a real estate agent, I was also able to get my commission for that property too, so I got a big check at closing and came to closing with no money. And that was like the big tipping point for me was after, doing 4 or 5 deals, I kind of understood real estate a little more at that point in time.
Cool. So that the eightplex that you bought, do you still own that?
I do actually. We're doing a refinance on it. We're closing on a refinance here in like next 3 weeks, hopefully. So yeah, so that
Awesome.
one we did the same thing, right? So I've owned that for almost 3 years now. Went through, raised all the rents on it from like 800 to like 1350 now. And did some rehabs on it, and that one's been kind of our cash cow for a little bit. But that one we're doing a refinance, pulling cash out of that, and doing some bigger stuff like more syndications and those kind of things.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, how much you pulling out?
Well, we're hoping for, we've had offers at so we paid 865 for it. We've had offers at 1.4. So I'm hoping the bank comes back at the same thing. It'd be nice, right?
Yeah, yeah. So
Um,
I just want to bring it to everyone's attention. Like, this is what real estate investors do. Like, we own the property as the value continues to go up. Sometimes we sell it, sometimes we don't. But the way we get access to that value is we refinance it. We pull that cash out. Now, Mitch,
Tax
let me
free.
ask you this. Are you paying taxes on that cash that you're pulling out?
No, and that's why I love the refinance model is because you can pull the money out without paying taxes on it.
Yeah. And I'm
Um,
not saying to pull the money out and go take a vacation. I'm not saying to go pull the money out and go to the bar and act like you're some, crazy
Bottle service.
rich person. Like, what I'm saying is take that money out and go make other investments with it. And then all of a sudden you have this deal paying you and that deal paying you and this other deal paying you. And then all of a sudden you're just like, oh my God, everybody's paying me. And my money's actually working for me and it's having babies and it's coming back with friends and we're all happy, you know? But yeah, that's really cool. I want to make sure everybody picked up on that because you said you refinance. Like that's what real estate investors do, especially the ones that want to create long-term wealth. They refinance and keep making other investments.
And the nice part is like, like this property, we had that equity in it for a little bit and we didn't really want to tap into it, but because the market's so good and the interest rates are so low right now, we're like, okay, let's, I think there's like really three phases. One, if you have all that equity in there and you're getting a lot of cash flow, the next phase would probably be like you refinance it, take some of that equity out and put that equity to work. Or the third phase is, you sell it, take all of it, and then go after another one. The third one, when you sell it, you really have to create the work again, right? You're starting a new wheel. But the third option really has the most potential for income increase, because you're really taking all that equity and you're putting it into another big deal that has value add opportunity. So I think there's, it's there. I would say it's like lazy money, where you're just kind of taking the cash and you're taking the cash flow. Then there's in between, which is like the refinance and maybe do another deal. And then there's the sell it and start all over again. So depending on how aggressive you want to be, you can really, you have a lot of options with real estate.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because you definitely, like when you refinance, right? The bank is not going to let you take all of the capital out. They're going to make sure they have a cushion in there because the bank, they understand that if the property value, something happens with the value, they want to make sure their loan that they're giving you is secured.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to make you keep a little equity in there. Whereas if you sell it, you can just move that entire bit of equity to the new deal. And especially if it's a deal where there's a lot of value add and you can force the appreciation.
Yeah.
You have a potential to grow your nest egg even bigger. But that's really good, man. So we were kind of digging into it, but what are the other things that you're involved in with real estate? We were talking about like the duplexes, the eightplex. I know we got the syndication. We're gonna get into that stuff, but I know you got some little things in the middle there. What are they?
Hey, what do you mean? Like my other side hustles or what? Like
like your other little side hustles with your Airbnbs and stuff.
I don't know. I mean, I've done some Airbnbs. I never really had a lot of success with Airbnbs. I did a lot of fix and flips. BC before COVID up to March last year, I was doing about 6 fix and flips at a time. We were doing wholesales, so we were wholesaling also. We do 2 or 3 of those deals a month, BC. But really, like, this last year, when I didn't really know what was going to happen with the market, so we did trim out a few of those fix and flips. I haven't really done a fix and flip since March of last year. I've been 14 months clean. So
yeah, no, and honestly, I was like, Mitch, man, I told Mitch to stop sending me the smaller deals because you got to think about it like this, right? Like if you've already done that, right, and you've already know how to execute on the small deals, like, and if you continue to execute on it, that's great. But like, you're not gonna get to where you want to go if you keep doing what you've always been doing. So I was like, Mitch, man, like, don't send me any more of these deals because it's like it's taking my attention off the big stuff and looking at some of the small stuff. But like, I love the term that you're using, like before COVID, right? BC, right? Because like COVID was a great time for a lot of us to just take a moment back and just like say, hey, where do I really want to go? And all the noise was kind of slowed down a little bit. There was new noise, but it was different, right? And after that, right, like you're seeing it. You're like, man, I'm not going to do that stuff because that was just a lot of burn and churn. I'm going to focus on this bigger stuff over here because that's where I want to go. And I can't get there unless I put my energy and effort and time into it, right?
Yeah, man.
If you want more time, you got to invest that time. If you want more money, you got to invest that money into where you want to go, right? And then you made those decisions. And then, like, let's talk about like the deal that we looked at down in Houston that we're buying. It's a 530 unit deal, 57 million bucks. But Mitch was like, hey, you're inviting me, I'm there. So what'd you think about that deal?
I loved it, man. Like I got a text message from you. You're like, hey, I got this deal in Houston. Like, do you want to fly out to see it? I'm like, yeah, I'm there. Like, what day is it? And these guys are way better soldiers than I am. They're like, we're flying out the same day. We're flying home the same day. Oliver's driving us all around. I'm like, I don't know how this guy's doing it. I'm a little lazier than that. I had to fly out the day prior, and then I caught the flight back. But this deal in Houston, man, it really is an attractive deal. Obviously I think it's fully subscribed now, but like, deals like this in Houston right now, there's so much opportunity out there in that market. I really, really like that deal. And again, the more real estate you look at, right? So even like, if you have the opportunity to go on one of these like tours where you can tour an apartment building and kind of get your eyes on what is actually happening, there's so much potential on these things. Like this deal, only what, like 40% of it was rehab. So we still had another like 60%. Um,
Yeah.
but like there's with value add real estate, the other thing in the Houston market, like the rent rates are like I was talking about how I went from like 850 to 1450 on these rents, but like in Houston, the same thing's happening. These rents are just like everyone's improving, and there's so much development going on out there, and there's so many jobs and so many like companies that are going and moving towards Houston, that this market is just really starting to get its wheels, and there's a lot of upside, I think, in that market. So um, it's a much bigger deal than a single family flip where you can make you can work the dirty hours and chase down contractors and all that stuff. When you're working with a team like this, it's also a higher level of professionalism, right? Because the people that are doing these deals aren't your average guy with a truck with the tools hanging out the back kind of thing. It's a professional setup. You have professional management, and then not only do you have professional management, you have professionals that have experience managing the professionals. So it's much safer than doing a fix and flip, I feel like.
Hey, Mitch, you had me laughing over there because, like, I remember when you said the guys hanging with the tools hanging out the back of the truck. When I was doing my single families, and this is where a lot of us start. Like,
Yeah.
I had this 1993 Toyota Corolla, and I would literally go to Home Depot. I would go to Home Depot in the evenings because I'd have like the 2x4 sticking out the window, and I didn't want people to see me. And like not really see me because I didn't really care at that point, but I didn't want to hit somebody because I was driving down the road with 2x4s hanging out the window.
No,
But yeah, no, that's how a lot of us start. Like we're like we're just like so. But those are the people that are like so hungry. They want it so much. They're willing to do whatever it takes to get the result. And then once the results start coming, then all of a sudden you can get the trucks. Then you can get people to actually move the material for you. And then that's how the results happen, right? Mm-hmm. But I had to share that story because I was like laughing inside over here. But yeah, no, like we got a really solid team on the bigger deals. Of course you have to, right? Like you can't go into those deals and thinking you're going to be one person doing it all on your own. No. Because honestly, that one person mentality is what literally, kept me in the smaller deals. Cause I didn't even understand that, like, as small thinking as this is, I didn't really think there was other people out there that were so committed and wanted to like do real estate like me. Right. Yeah. So like, it wasn't until I started like putting my tensions out there, like hosting a meetup group. Like, that's why I'm saying like, I'm like, these are my people. Like, these people like love real estate. They talk about it at like 9:30 in the morning. They want to be around it. They want to show up for it. Right. Yeah. And like, cause I've always had that inside me. I always had like the desire to like talk about this stuff. And now like these people are surrounding me, and then now we can go after the big deals and do them together. Cause it's always a better situation when you have one person, or 10 people working on one problem instead of one person working on 10 problems, right?
Yeah, man. No, I mean, you really hit on it. Like, we both came from New England, right? Originally started, like, you're from Maine, I'm from Vermont. And it is tough, right? Like I kind of always like when I explain this to people, it's like, I always felt like I was out in the woods with like a flashlight, like looking for other people. And I'm walking around like looking for other people that are interested in real estate. And it's difficult, right? Because, if you're out there with a single flashlight and you're moving, it's really hard to find other people. But once other people start, meeting up with people and you're like in the woods with a group of people people aren't walking off in different directions, right? They're all sticking together and they're walking around looking for the other people. And I think that's how real estate happens, right? You're out there, you're walking around on your own, you find a couple people, and then you stick together when you're leaving. And then you start to grow in a bigger and bigger group, and then you have everyone together, and now everyone can get out of the woods together. And I think that's how real estate really is. You start off on your own, you get a couple people that can help you, maybe get some partners. And once you get past that partners phase, then you can really start to grow.
Dude, I've never thought about it like that, but I love that. That's awesome. And then we can get out of the woods together.
Go.
If you like, I grew up in Maine, so like I was one of those kids that I remember me and my buddy, we were walking in the woods, we were playing hide and go seek, and like we literally got lost in the woods, like yelling and screaming, like help, help. Like nobody found us until we found this road, and like we were able to like walk home through the road. But like, dude, it was scary.
Yeah, man.
Like when you go and you start talking about partners and you start talking about, you know, groups of people and doing things together, what do you do to like vet your partners or like in like the syndicates that you do work with?
Yeah. You know, that's a big thing. Like, you know, a lot of times, especially on the syndicate level, right? I think a lot of people have that question, right? Like, who do I want to work with? Who do I want to work with? And you know, is it gonna turn out right? Like, and especially like in fix and flips, right? You know, I was fixing and flipping properties. We were doing them in like 3 different states at the time. So you know, finding good contractors that I could trust and finding good partners that could, you know, take the ball when I couldn't be there. You know, I'm not going to say that every partnership worked out, you know, perfect, right? Because there's definitely times that I had to move on from those partnerships. But I think, you know, when you have a relationship prior, I think that makes it a little easier, right? Like, you know, for us, like, you know, we spent almost a year together before we found out we were in a deal together. And then, you know, now we're doing another one together and spend, you know, almost 3 years. But like, you know, I've been around you, you know, I know other people that you know, and you know, like Tony is a super great guy, man. I'm looking around, I'm like, why is he not popping up? Like, where's Tony at? He's out hustling right now, you know? But like good people know good people. And I think like, you know, like over time, when you start building these relationships with people like we have, you know, over the years, like you'll start to bring people in, and I'll start to bring people in, and like, and those people will vouch for people. Like you're not gonna tell, like, if you had a bad experience with someone, you're gonna, hey Mitch, you know, offline here, let me tell you, like, this is the experience I had. You know, like, I'm not telling you that's the experience you're gonna have, but just, you know, this is what happened to me, so keep your eyes on it. And I think that's what happens over time. But really, again, good people know good people, man. A players hang out with A players. They're not spending time, you know, with people that are going to drag them down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people, like, you know, in this group, right? If people are showing up here, it's very likely that, you know, these are good quality people because they're here on a Saturday, like you said, man. Like, and again, like, to everyone that showed up here, like, super, super big, like, round of applause for you guys, because you could be anywhere, enjoying the weather, but you're diving in, you're making moves, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Mitch. It's like the first thing has got to be the mindset, right? Like you literally have to find, when you're looking for partners, like you have to have alignment in the mindset. If you guys are both in the same trajectory, you're going to, like, that's the first step. And then it's like, after that, it's like, who's going to walk it and talk it, right? And it's not, because it's easy to talk it, right? It's easy to say, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, and I want to do that. But like, are you going to the events? Are you networking? Like, where did we see each other? We saw each other at the events, and then we see each other at the next event. So not only are we're talking it, we're walking it, and then we're continuing to see each other over and over and over and over again, right? Yeah. And nobody's coming up to me and say, hey, Mitch is a bad guy, and no one's coming up to you and say, hey, Oliver's a bad guy. What people are coming up and say, hey, dude, that guy Oliver is awesome, and that guy Mitch is awesome, right? And then it just keeps like, that's, and then they're like, hey, there's a deal, there's an opportunity. We ran into something at the same time. Let's go after it and let's purchase this together, right?
Absolutely, man. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You know, that alignment and is huge in this business. It really helps, you know.
Yeah. And honestly, I love partners because like the accountability piece is like crazy. Like I'll do, like I'm just naturally a person that wants to hold myself accountable and be disciplined, right?
Yeah.
And it's not, you know, it's just something that I've like continued to train myself to do, right?
Dude, partners, but I mean, you hit on it, right? Like for partners for me is something that when I coach businesses on like how to build their teams and stuff like that, because sometimes what they do is they're like, okay, this is their job and they run it all the way to finish. I think that there's something about having a partnership or that handoff of task, right? Like if I have a task that's due Friday and you can't move forward, like until I give you that task, like I'm working harder to make sure that my task is done, because like if I let you down, then the whole team fails. So I think with partnerships, there is a higher level of accountability than self accountability. Like I know you're big on goals, I'm big on goals, but if I tell you I'm going to have something to you on Friday and I let you down, like then we all lose. Like I don't want to be the guy that let the team down.
Dude,
So
you're not gonna be, right? Like, especially if you're a person that has integrity. Like, I'll push even harder when I tell someone that I have a requirement due to them. Like,
yeah,
I like letting myself down. Like, okay, like no one's looking. Like, all right, maybe I won't do this run or I won't do this thing, right? But like to let you down, like, there's no way. Like, I'm gonna. I mean, and if it does happen, like 120% effort was already put into it to make it
yeah,
not happen, and there was no possible way.
yeah.
Like
And you'll
I'm gonna
know
exhaust
before.
all
Yeah,
resources type of
yeah.
thing.
And you'll know before it happens, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
I'm not going to come to you like, hey, it's Friday.
yeah,
Whoops, I didn't make it.
yeah,
You're going to know Thursday, Wednesday.
yeah,
Like, hey, I'm working my ass off here. Can you help me out? Can you help pull the string a little tighter?
yeah. No, I totally agree. So, Jen also asked, can you also chat about some of the hot markets currently that you suggest? What do you like? What do you like for hot markets, Rich?
Yeah, I actually, I was down in the Keys this weekend. Hanging out with some financial advisors trying to raise some capital, and we were talking about hot markets, and we were, it's something interesting about how some cities always tend to outperform other markets, right? Like, and I always go like I was investing in Cleveland for a while, but it's like I never wake up or I never go to an event and someone's like, you know what, one day I want to move my family to Ohio. I think it's going to be great. Like, hey, Detroit, there's a lot of, return on investment there. You can make good cash flow. But I've never ever heard someone say, like, you know what a beautiful town is? Downtown Detroit. Like I want to live down. Like I just don't hear it. Right. But when you do hear people saying it's like one day I want to move to Florida. One day I want to live on the beach. One day I want to live by a lake. One day, I want to be downtown, major city. Right. So I think that there's something to be said about just the way people think in general, right? We're always looking to move more towards comfort, right? We're always just by nature trying to get more comfortable. So, Texas tax free, Tennessee, Nashville. I like North Carolina's. I really wish, like, if the North Carolinas went like no income tax, like that thing would like overnight. So I like North Carolina. I like South Carolina. I like Florida. I like Texas. Oklahoma City seems to be popping. I mean, that's what I'm seeing. Of course, Georgia too. I'm not really hot on the Georgia market. It's just not my market. But yeah, I like those other ones.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean those are all the states that like um, are landlord friendly. They are business friendly. They are states where you're not going to have a lot of like all this regulation that's going to slow you down as a property owner, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So it's all those are all great states, and the main thing that you talked about was um, jobs, right? Jobs are moving there. Like
Mhm.
that's what then brings the people, which is what we then provide housing for the people. So we
Yeah,
want to always be where the jobs are, which is like the lifeblood of real estate, right? And those states are getting tremendous amount of jobs, right? Um,
absolutely.
Mark had also asked, do you still have an active real estate license or are you a broker?
Yeah, I still have my real estate license. I'm at EXP real estate. I still hold my license in Vermont. I have a team there. Yeah, we just put a listing, like a $1.2 million listing under contract, or under agreement, I guess, here this month. So we're still moving a lot of real estate on that side of things. But it's a team, right? So I built the systems, built the models, and just keep recruiting people to help build their business out. But for me, real estate investing, and then obviously, or not obviously, but e-commerce is a big priority for me. Those are the two things I'm focused on.
Yeah. So this is one of my philosophies. So I like to have my business, right? working, and like your business can be real estate, right? Like you can do like some transactional things in real estate to be able to generate income. You
Yeah.
then generate that income, right? And then you funnel that income into real estate, that cash flows for you, that, and then all of a sudden you can have money working for you instead of
Yeah.
you working for the money. Is
Right.
that kind of what your philosophy is too, when you start saying, you know, your big thing is the online, you know, merchandise stores?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that is the model, right? Whether it's a W-2 or your own business, or once you have enough assets that you can start rolling those assets, you get more comfortable, you know, putting them out there for these 2 to 3 year periods or 5 year periods. But for me, my big funnel is my business, e-commerce, right? We sell on Amazon, Walmart, Overstock, and Wayfair. And I take that money, and, you know, once you have a good steady understanding of what your cash flow is going to be, and you can, you know, you can basically start jumping in more deals like this. And for me, like, that's kind of why, like, even like the, you know, the syndication on the limited side, right, where it's like, okay, let me park a little bit of money here because I don't have the time to dive into it. You know, that's still an option for me because I want my money to keep working for me. I like the tax benefits of it, and then I know that in 2 to 3 years maybe I'll have more free time, and then I can put it back out there on something I want to do, or keep rolling it down the road and keep laddering it. Um, but yeah, no, that's definitely the model, right? Take, you know, get the cash flow coming in, and then get your cash working for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with the LP thing that you were mentioning. You know, honestly, the money that I invest in my deals, like I love that more than the GP side, right? The LP side, they get like 70% of the deal, right? Like the GP side gets 30% of the deal. So like, I love when my money's working for me instead of me working for my money. So totally agree with that.
And I'm sure everyone in here is pretty educated, but just, you know, the general partners, just if you do want to explain like what the difference between GP and LP are, like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure
you dig into
everyone
it.
knows.
Let's hear
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Well, like the general partners are the guys that are, you know, making sure that the deal, or the guys and girls that are making sure the deal is secured, and putting in the work and managing the asset, and managing the construction, and managing, you know, the property managers, while the limited partners, the LPs, are just really, you know, taking an opportunity to put their money to work and trusting the general partnerships that they have their best interest in mind. So they don't have to worry about the tenants. They don't have to worry about the toilets. They don't have to worry about whether or not they're hitting their KPIs. So they kind of just put the money in and let the general partners take care of it from there. Right?
Yeah, execute on the business plan. And
Yeah.
KPIs is key performance indicators. You got to track the growth, right?
That real estate lingo, right?
Yeah. No, totally agree. So let's dig back into that 530 unit deal, right?
Yeah.
What was like? Was this the first property that you've been to of that size?
530 units. Yeah. I mean, I love it, man, because growing up, right, in Vermont, um, there was not even a single apartment complex more than, I would say, 20 units, right? Like 16 units with, like, you know, if I'm driving down, like, you know, maybe you see like an 8 or 10 unit, but 16 units was like, holy crap, that's a monster growing up. And now, you know, in the last like 5 years, you know, they're finally saying like, maybe we should build some of these bigger developments here. And even these bigger developments in Vermont are still only like 140, maybe 200 units. And then, you know, you go down to the college campuses, and that's where you see like the really big buildings. But yeah, that's the first time, you know, I've ever toured a city block, is what it really is. Like this thing is literally like an entire block. Um, but the thing is, like, you know, when you're looking at these other deals, like we talked about it, like, you know, they're sectioned off. It's not just like 530 units in one building. Although I would love to own a skyscraper. Um, like it's, you know, there's sections of buildings, right? So you can literally look at these buildings as like little pieces and say like, okay, this building looks good, this building looks good, this building looks good. So the same tools and systems that you use to analyze smaller deals, you're really just taking a look at a bigger deal like this and saying, okay, yeah, all these pieces check out. But yeah, 530 units was something that I've always dreamed of, but never really thought we'd be able to put our hands on. And now look at us, huh?
Yeah. And honestly, like I think you made a really good point, and you really like simplified it. Basically, you know, it's having a bunch of single families stacked on top of each other, and like they come in like little clusters of 8, right? But you just own the whole block instead of just owning that one cluster, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
love it.
yeah, it's always and that's always a good situation to be in, right? Because like all of a sudden you have multiple streams of income. Like even if we lose 10% of our tenants, right, we still have 480 people still paying us, right? 480 families, right? Not even people, 480 families, right? Whereas you have a single family, you lose that one tenant, you're 100% vacant.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a cool situation. So like one thing I wanted to talk about was so that property, right, actually got hit by a flood during what was it, hurricane, I don't know, it was Harvey, right? Harvey, yeah.
Harvey, yeah, I think.
um
Yeah.
so that property, all of the first floor units got serious water damage. So the previous owners had received $40 million to go in and do a renovation on all the ground floor units. So when we look at that, right, $40 million divided by 530 units, that's $75,000 a unit, right? So like when we saw the property, all of the renovation had been done, like on all the ground floor units. So like the units were beautiful, right?
Yeah.
It was like basically walking into a brand new property, and it was built in the 1980s.
Well, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Is like this is an older building, but they did a complete rehab on everything because I mean they had the insurance money, which is amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
And they didn't spend $75,000 per unit. That was a non-taxable event. So like
Yeah.
they probably spent 15 to 20 grand a unit, which is like 10 to 15 million bucks. And then the rest of that went into their pocket, which is great. Like as an owner and as an investor, like I love hearing stories like that. I want those stories to happen for me,
Yeah,
So like I get excited.
Yeah, I've seen a few deals. I've seen a few deals like that where the returns are a little higher when these non-taxable events like that happen. Like you never wish that it happens, like a hurricane or a tornado or anything like that. But like sometimes there's a fear, right? Like, oh, what happens if you buy this real estate in this market and something happens, right? Well, these assets we're not going to not insure them. And those events, if they do happen, it's actually it is sometimes a little bit better, like on the return side of things, just because, like you said, it's non-taxable and a lot of that stuff does get returned back to the investors. But yeah, I mean, a lot of those units, man, they did a great job. Like the ones that we're doing like if they are doing the rehabs on, which I know we have what 10 was it? How much is the allocated? 3 million for capex? Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, 3 million. Yeah, 3 million
3
for
million for
capex.
capex.
So yeah, we're gonna go in and renovate all of the second floor units because none of that has been done, right?
Right.
And then we're gonna update some of the amenities, add some additional parking, covered parking, and it's a really clean deal. There's not much that needs to be done to it. It has all new windows, all new ACs, but we'll go in and just build on what the previous ownership had built. So
Absolutely.
definitely excited about it.
Yes.
So Mitch, where are you headed next, man? I know we're talking about this 530 unit deal. What's like, where are you headed next with all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, continue down this path. As syndication is definitely the avenue. Finding other investors that want to get actively or get involved in these things is a big priority for me. We're doing some refinancing. We're repositioning some of our smaller assets. We're selling off some of these assets. We're not selling them all off because obviously the taxes. We don't want to get hit with everything. So we're trickling out of the smaller, like 2 units, 4 units, anything less than even our 10 units we're getting rid of. But yeah, we're moving that towards these bigger deals because really it's at this point it's I kind of I understand it, right? It's like the first deal. I think a lot of people get they're like, hey, I'm interested in syndication. I'm not really sure how to learn. So what I did was I just basically invested alongside of someone and I was able to kind of follow along on their journey. That was huge for me. Then the second one, I'm like, okay, I understand this. Let me try it one more time. Make sure I understand this. Like, okay, now it makes sense, right? And once you get through on an exit, then you're like, okay, that makes sense. Now I understand it. So once the ball gets rolling, I mean, for me right now, like I'll continue to buy more. I like for my personal portfolio where I JV on some stuff is like this 20 to 40 unit deals, and then I also like to be in on these bigger deals, right? So I'm going to keep my portfolio scaling and doing 1031s and keep stepping them up and keep defer, then die on my tax basis here. But like, I'm going to keep rolling that and I'm going to keep rolling my money through these syndications. But I'm not going to be doing fix and flips anymore unless it's got a really nice meat to it. And, and right now, like, I don't want to go back down to having that day-to-day job. I'd rather be more of an investor. So.
Yeah, you start getting looking at your time, right? And you're like, oh, I only have this much time. Do I want to fill all that time with a bunch of fix and flip headaches, or do I want to fill that time with some bigger problems that will get me a bigger result at the end of the day? So I totally agree with that. Um, and
Think
COVID
big,
was a
think
BC
big.
before COVID was a great wake up call to all of that, you know, and
Yeah.
just really focus on where you want to go instead of just doing what you're used to doing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, I want to hear the big mistake, man. What was your worst mistake in real estate from a transaction standpoint so far? I know, and I'm not saying you're not going to have other
Yeah,
mistakes.
yeah.
It's impossible not to have mistakes, but what's the biggest one so far?
Well, I mean, we had one fix and flip that we hired a bad contractor on. GC, he was supposed to be the GC, supposed to be pulling permits. Never pulled the permits. We kept moving forward. We're like, oh, whatever, no big deal. And then one day, the GC guy got really upset because he wanted a draw for a payment for something because he had to pay his guys. But the work wasn't done, right? So, we're really high on accountability where it's like, listen, man, I'm happy to pay you. Like, do you want to stay extra hours? Do you want to finish this? Do you want to get this thing painted? Like, do you want to, do you want to check this off, this mark? Like, but if the work's not done, I can't pay you for the work that's not done. And I know contractors have, bills, and a lot of them are, they're really working hard to make sure that their teams are paid. But we hired a bad GC, and and instead of him finishing the work, he went and reported us to the town for not pulling permits, even though it was on him to pull the permits. Because we're the owners, we got slapped with it, and it took almost 6 months to go through and get that thing done. So a hard money loan on a fix and flip property for 6 months while we can't touch it. It's all red tagged. And then you got to do the things that you don't want to do, right? Like update the panels and all these other small things, because now the city's in there. So when you're make sure you have permits if you're going to do things that need permits. I would say sometimes you can get away with it, but that was my biggest, most costly fix and flip mistake.
Oh man, I
Yeah,
feel your pain, man. Those
red
a
tag.
lot of times dealing with the city, you know, with that type of stuff can be really, really painful.
Yeah,
Where was that, if you don't mind me asking?
that was here in Florida. Yeah,
Oh wow, yeah, that could be really, really painful.
classic. Yeah,
Yeah,
classic.
yep. And it's crazy that those things happen. That's why you always got to like trust but verify, right?
Yeah. And they were at a real estate meetup down here and everything like that. But I knew that they were kind of green, and I was trying to like help them get into the business, because I had quite a few projects going on. I'm like, all right, well, I'd love to have another team, right? If I can get this team going, but and they had, they were able to pull permits, but they just never did because they're trying to save that, $200-300 kind of thing here. So and I was just like, just keep going. In 3 weeks we'll be finished with this project. Actually, we were only a week away from finishing the project, which was the worst part about it, man. It's like, if he just finished, the blue tape stuff, and didn't lose it, then we would have been fine. But then he reported us, so whatever.
Yeah. If you don't mind sharing in the chat, how do people get in contact with you? I'd really
Yeah, man.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, we had a nightmare story with with stop work orders and all that stuff here in DC as well. Our neighbors, our neighbors just didn't want construction in the neighborhood, you know? So I totally can relate to that. And when the city comes in and they slap that stuff on your door, it's always you're guilty until proven innocent. So like you have to justify why like the neighbors are wrong. And then you got
Yep.
20, 30 neighbors coming at you. You're one person. It's like it's
Yes.
really difficult to navigate through. It's really like you're almost to the point where like I was actually just thinking about it the other day. I probably would have thrown in the towel if I wasn't so far into this thing, you know?
Mhm.
But like I was so far into it that I was just like, man, it's gonna be a 1-on-30 fight. So it is what it is.
Yes.
We ended up getting it done and working through all the issues that were coming up and why we were right and all this stuff. But it just takes up so much time and
Yeah.
energy. And
Uh-huh.
honestly, that was like when I was like, you know what, I'm never gonna get into a situation where there's one person working on 10 problems again, you know?
Yeah, no, I love that. That's that thinking big, man. That's what I love about you, man. You're always pushing the bar. Like, how can I think bigger? How can I think bigger? How can I build this team bigger? And that's really it though. Like, it's that mindset shift where it's like, there was maybe something that, some story, some moment where you're like, man, this is painful. I don't want to do this anymore. And then you finally just reach that decision where you're like, I have to change this because otherwise I'm going to be doing the same thing I'm doing every day forever. And unless you're okay with that, you're content with that, then you have to make a change. And I mean, that's that Tony Robbins breakthrough stuff right there, man.
Yeah.
Like, burn the boat, make the change, do what you have to do, like, and take those opportunities when you can.
Yeah. You just said something that was really powerful right there. And it was the I have to. I didn't realize that, right? Like, so like I was doing a Tony Robbins training and I was late to an event. And then I was like, I didn't realize how much I say the word I have to, right? So I was late to an event and I was like, hey, I have to go. And then the people were like, dude, you don't have to do anything. And I didn't even, it brought it, but it was such a great moment for me because it brought it to the forefront of my mind. You're right. I don't have to do anything. You're right. But I want to go, but like, I don't have to. And I used to use that so much. I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. And that have to like helps create massive change in your life. Cause it's like, you're going to like literally pull yourself to create that result, man. So I love that word pattern. I have to. We all have to get into multifamily real estate. We all have to do bigger deals. We all have to continue to push ourselves to reach our full potential, right?
Yes, dude.
Because we all have it. We're all showing up. We're all willing to put in the energy and effort. So we have to do it.
Awesome.
Love that, man. I appreciate you, Mitch. Does anybody else have any other questions for Mitch? If not, put some love in the chat for Mitch. Tell him if you liked it. His backstory, his story through real estate, his journey. Thank you for sharing, Mitch. We got from Jen.
Oh, you guys are great.
Thanks, Mitch. Appreciate all the info from Brian. Perry says, yes, thanks for sharing. Page of notes, just excellent. Yeah, I got my page of notes. I always take my notes, man. I love learning from a leader, man. So Jen says, thank you for your services too. Mark is like, thanks, Mitch. Right, burn the boat so you have to.
Yeah.
Water, thanks for sharing your insights and service, man. Really appreciate you, Mitch. I love you, and
yeah, man, for
see you
sure.
at the next event, man.
Yeah, dude. Can't wait to see you soon. All right, man.
Yes, all right, appreciate you guys. Thanks, Perry, Brian, Don, Eduardo, Mike, Brandy, Mark, Melissa, Leah, Sammy, and Thomas. See you guys later. Hey there, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please click subscribe down below and give me a thumbs up. You can reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook at Oliver Fernandez 3. I have new videos just like this one dropping every week. So drop a comment down below and let me know what you want to hear next. Until then, keep growing and keep learning. Just do it.